The twin moons of Verdania cast silver light through the canopy of luminescent trees as Marcus Vale sat on his handcrafted porch, nursing a cup of bitter root tea. The forest moon's ethereal beauty had once soothed his troubled soul, but tonight, restlessness gnawed at him. 5 years of self-imposed exile hadn't been enough to silence the ghosts that haunted his dreams. Marcus was a man built for action, his broad shoulders and calloused hands testament to years of military engineering and survival. Dark hair fell to his shoulders, unkempt and wild, while his beard had grown thick and unruly. Piercing blue eyes that once sparkled with ambition now held the weight of regret. The simple cabin behind him, constructed entirely by his own hands from local timber and stone, represented everything he'd become: functional, isolated, and deliberately forgotten. The comm unit beside his chair crackled to life, its archaic sound cutting through the forest's gentle symphony. Only one person possessed the frequency to this particular device. Marcus, old friend. The voice belonged to Jorik Senna, a tall, graceful being from the water world of Aquarius Prime. His melodic accent carried undertones that suggested urgency beneath the casual greeting. Jorik. Marcus's voice was rougher than it had been years ago, rusty from disuse. This better not be what I think it is. I need your help. The words came quickly, without the usual diplomatic pleasantries that characterized Jorik's speech. A significant favor. Marcus set down his tea with deliberate care, his jaw tightening. The answer is no. Whatever it is, whoever it is, I'm done with that life. You haven't heard what I'm asking. I don't need to. I came here to be left alone, Jorik. That was our agreement. A pause stretched between them, filled only by the gentle susurrus of wind through bioluminescent leaves. When Jorik spoke again, his tone carried the weight of desperation. Someone's trying to kill her, Marcus. Princess Celestine of the Valerian Empire. There was an attempt on her life 3 days ago, poison in her ceremonial wine. We barely managed to get her out of the palace alive. Marcus stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the wooden planks. Then call the Imperial Guard. Call the Planetary Defense Force. Call anyone but me. The attack came from within. Someone in her inner circle, someone with access to the most secure areas of the palace. We don't know who we can trust. Jorik's voice grew softer, more personal. She needs to disappear completely while we root out the conspiracy. And you, my friend, are the best at making people disappear. I said no. But even as Marcus spoke the words, he felt the familiar stirring of purpose, the call to action that had once defined him. He crushed the feeling ruthlessly. I'm already en route to your location, Jorik continued as if Marcus hadn't spoken. We'll be there within the hour. You what? Marcus's bellow sent several small creatures scurrying deeper into the forest. How dare you assume? Because I know you, Marcus Vale. Despite everything that happened on Epsilon Station, despite the guilt you carry, you're still the man who can't stand by when someone innocent needs protection. The mention of Epsilon Station hit Marcus like a physical blow. The failed rescue mission, the civilians who died because of his miscalculation, the weight of responsibility that had driven him to this remote moon, it all came flooding back. That's exactly why I can't help, Marcus said quietly. People die when they depend on me. And they'll definitely die if you don't try. Jorik's voice was gentle but firm. 1 month, Marcus. Give me 1 month to identify the traitors and eliminate the threat. After that, she'll be out of your life forever. Marcus looked out at the forest that had been his sanctuary, his prison, his world for 5 long years. The idea of sharing this space with another person, especially royalty, made his skin crawl. Yet beneath his resistance, something else stirred, loneliness, perhaps, or the memory of who he used to be. If I agree, and I'm not saying I will, there would be conditions. Name them. My rules. My methods. She lives like I live, no exceptions. No servants, no luxury, no special treatment. If she wants to survive, she adapts. Agreed. And Jorik? Marcus's voice turned hard. This makes us even. The debt from Epsilon Station is paid in full. Understood. The calm went dead, leaving Marcus alone with the weight of his decision. He looked around his sanctuary, the carefully tended garden, the workshop where he crafted furniture and tools, the small greenhouse that provided fresh vegetables. All of it would be invaded by the presence of some pampered princess who probably hadn't faced a real hardship in her privileged life. 53 minutes later, a sleek shuttle descended through the canopy, its engines disturbing the peaceful quiet of the forest. Marcus watched from his porch as the craft settled in the small clearing he'd designated as a landing pad years ago, never expecting to use it. The shuttle's ramp extended with a soft hiss, and two figures emerged. Jorik stepped out first, his aquatic heritage evident in the way he moved, fluid and graceful, with an otherworldly elegance. His skin held a faint blue-green tint that shimmered in the moonlight, and his large, dark eyes reflected an ancient wisdom. He wore simple traveling clothes, but they couldn't disguise his innate nobility. Then she appeared, and Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat. Princess Celestine of the Valerian Empire was nothing like he'd expected. Where he'd imagined a soft, spoiled creature, he saw strength in her posture and intelligence in her violet eyes. Her hair was an impossible shade of silver white that seemed to capture and reflect the forest's bioluminescent glow. She wore a form-fitting travel suit that suggested both elegance and practicality, though the way she picked her way carefully across the uneven ground betrayed her unfamiliarity with natural terrain. Marcus, Jorik said formally, "May I present Her Royal Highness, Princess Celestine Valdris of the Valerian Empire." "Your Highness, this is Marcus Vale, the finest survival expert and protector I know." The princess surveyed Marcus's cabin with barely concealed horror, her perfect features arranged in an expression of polite dismay. When her gaze settled on Marcus himself, his unkempt appearance, his rough clothing, his less than welcoming scowl, her lips compressed into a thin line. "This is your solution?" she asked Jorik, her voice carrying the cultured accent of someone raised in palaces. "A primitive dwelling on a backwater moon, protected by..." She paused, searching for appropriately diplomatic phrasing. "A recluse?" Marcus felt his temper flare. "Your Highness," he said, making the title sound like an insult, "you're welcome to return to your palace. I'm sure your assassins will be delighted to know exactly where to find you." Celestine's violet eyes widened in shock, clearly unaccustomed to such direct address. Color flooded her pale cheeks, and for a moment, Marcus thought she might actually strike him. "Both of you, please," Jorik interjected smoothly. "Your Highness, Marcus is the only person I trust completely with your safety. His methods may be unconventional, but they are effective. Marcus, the princess has already survived one attempt on her life. She needs protection, not attitude." Marcus studied the princess more carefully, noting details he'd missed in his initial assessment. The slight tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes constantly scanned her surroundings, the barely perceptible tremor in her hands, she was afraid, despite her royal composure. "1 month, he said finally. "But we do this my way. No negotiation, no compromise. You want to survive. You live by my rules." Celestine lifted her chin defiantly. "And what exactly do your rules entail?" "You eat what I eat, sleep where I tell you to sleep, and learn what I teach you. There's no room service, no servants, no one to cater to your every whim. You'll learn to defend yourself, to survive in the wilderness, and to be useful instead of ornamental." "This is outrageous," Celestine protested, turning to Jorik. "I am a princess of the Valerian Empire. I cannot be expected to live like a person who wants to stay alive," Marcus suggested dryly. Jorik placed a gentle hand on the princess's arm. "Your Highness, these are the terms. I know they seem harsh, but..." "Fine." Celestine's voice was tight with controlled fury. "I accept your conditions, Marcus Vale. But don't expect me to enjoy this arrangement." Marcus allowed himself a grim smile. Trust me, princess. I don't expect either of us to enjoy this. As Jorik departed, leaving them alone in the forest's silver-lit clearing, Marcus wondered what he'd gotten himself into. The princess stood rigid beside her single bag of belongings, looking like an exotic flower transplanted into alien soil. The next month would either kill them both or change everything. He was beginning to suspect it might be both. Princess Celestine Valdris had never been awakened by birdsong before. In the palace, soft chimes and gentle music marked the beginning of each day, followed by servants drawing back silken curtains to reveal manicured gardens and marble courtyards. Here on Verdania, raucous calls from alien creatures jolted her from uneasy sleep as harsh sunlight streamed through the cabin's single window. She sat up in the narrow cot Marcus had assigned her, every muscle in her body protesting. The simple woolen blanket felt rough against her skin, and the straw-filled mattress had left her with aches in places she didn't know could ache. Through the thin walls, she could hear Marcus moving about with quiet efficiency, already beginning his day. Celestine had spent her 25 years surrounded by luxury and protocol. Her mornings began with warm baths drawn by attendants, followed by carefully selected meals prepared by the finest chefs in the empire. Her closest companion had always been Nyx, her handmaiden and confidant, who knew every preference and need before Celestine herself did. Now, as she pulled on the simple clothes Marcus had provided, rough-spun fabric that felt foreign against her skin, she wondered what Nyx would think of this situation. The thought of her friend's worried face made Celestine's chest tight with homesickness. "You're awake." Marcus's voice from the doorway made her jump. He stood silhouetted against the morning light, his broad frame filling the entrance. "Good. We start training in 10 minutes. "Training?" Celestine turned to face him, still struggling with the unfamiliar clothing. The pants were too long, the shirt too loose, and she felt like a child playing dress-up in adult clothes. Self-defense. Survival skills. Things that might keep you alive. His blue eyes swept over her disheveled appearance with something that might have been amusement. "Unless you'd prefer to depend on your royal guards who weren't there when someone tried to poison you." The reminder stung, but Celestine lifted her chin defiantly. "I am not some helpless creature who needs to be trained like a pet." "No," Marcus agreed, stepping into the room. "You're a helpless creature who needs to be trained like a survivor." He moved closer, and Celestine caught the scent of him, something clean and masculine, tinged with the forest's earthy fragrance. Despite herself, she found the proximity unsettling in ways that had nothing to do with fear. "Your stance is all wrong," he continued, apparently oblivious to her reaction. "You carry yourself like someone who's never had to fight for anything. That needs to change." Before she could protest, his hands were on her shoulders, adjusting her posture. His touch was firm but not rough, professional yet somehow intimate. Celestine felt heat flush through her body at the contact. "Stand like you own the ground beneath your feet," Marcus instructed, his voice lower now. "Not like you're afraid of dirtying your shoes." "I am not afraid. Yesterday you wouldn't walk across my garden because you thought the soil might stain your boots." His hands moved to her waist, positioning her properly. "Today you're going to learn to move through terrain that could kill you." Celestine opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. He was right, and they both knew it. The truth was humbling and infuriating in equal measure. "Why are you helping me?" she asked instead. "Jorik said you've been living alone for years. You clearly don't want me here." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his hands still resting on her waist. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight she hadn't heard before. "Because someone has to. And because." He paused, seeming to struggle with the words. "Because I know what it's like to be hunted." The admission hung between them like a bridge neither was quite ready to cross. Celestine felt something shift in her perception of this rough, solitary man. Beneath his harsh exterior, she glimpsed pain that mirrored her own fear. "What happened to you?" she asked softly. Marcus stepped back abruptly, the moment broken. "That's not your concern." Are you ready to learn, or would you rather go back to being a target? The training that followed was unlike anything Celestine had ever experienced. Marcus taught her to fall without injury, to break free from various holds, to use leverage and momentum against larger opponents. Her years of court dancing had given her balance and grace, but this was something entirely different, raw, practical, and absolutely exhausting. Again, Marcus commanded as she struggled to execute a defensive move. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the cool morning air. I can't, Celestine gasped, her arms trembling with fatigue. I need to rest. Your assassin won't wait for you to catch your breath. But something in his tone had softened. 5 minutes. Then we continue. As they sat in the shade of the cabin's eaves, sharing water from Marcus's canteen, Celestine found herself studying his profile. The harsh lines of his face, the way his dark hair fell across his forehead, the careful way he kept space between them, all of it spoke of a man who had learned to trust no one, not even himself. You're very good at this, she observed, accepting the canteen from his hands. Their fingers brushed in the exchange, and she felt that same flutter of awareness. I had good teachers. He looked out at the forest, his expression distant. Hard lessons tend to stick. Were you a soldier? Something like that. Marcus glanced at her, and for a moment his guard lowered. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone softer. More, fragile. He gestured vaguely at her sweat-stained clothes, her disheveled hair. Most royalty would have demanded Jorik take them somewhere more civilized by now. Celestine considered this. Most royalty haven't had someone try to kill them. It changes your perspective on what's truly important. Something flickered in Marcus's eyes, surprise, perhaps, or a grudging respect. Yes, it does. The afternoon brought lessons in wilderness survival. Marcus showed her how to identify edible plants, how to find clean water, how to read the signs that indicated dangerous predators. Celestine absorbed it all with growing fascination, discovering capabilities she'd never known she possessed. Your people, she said as they gathered firewood, they don't prepare their children for hardship. Some do. But those born to privilege. Marcus shrugged. They assume their wealth and status will always protect them. As I did. The admission came easier than she'd expected. I lived in a bubble of safety and protocol. The most dangerous thing in my world was choosing the wrong dress for a state dinner. And now? Celestine hefted the bundle of wood she'd collected, feeling the burn in her unused muscles. Now I'm learning that survival isn't about protocol. It's about adapting. That evening, as they sat by the fire sharing a simple meal Marcus had prepared, Celestine found herself relaxing in ways she hadn't in years. The palace had been full of watchers, servants, courtiers, advisors, all with their own agendas and expectations. Here, there was only Marcus, and despite his gruff exterior, she sensed no hidden motives in him. Tell me about your home, Marcus said unexpectedly. Your real home, not the palace. Celestine smiled, surprised by the question. There's a garden on the east wing where I used to hide as a child. It's full of singing flowers from the celestial rings, they bloom only at night and their petals chime like bells in the wind. I would sneak out there when the court became too suffocating. You were lonely. It wasn't a question, and Celestine felt exposed by his insight. Royalty is often lonely. Everyone wants something from you, but few want to know you. Marcus nodded slowly. I understand that feeling. Do you? She leaned forward, drawn by the quiet pain in his voice. What did you want to be, before whatever happened to make you come here? For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, staring into the fire, he spoke. I wanted to build things. Cities, bridges, homes where families could be safe and happy. I was good at it, engineering, construction, creating something lasting. His jaw tightened. I thought if I could build strong enough walls, high enough barriers, I could keep out all the bad things. What changed? I learned that some threats come from within. That sometimes the walls you build to keep others safe become prisons. He looked at her then, his blue eyes reflecting the firelight. Sometimes the people you're trying to protect die anyway, and all your walls can't stop it. The raw honesty in his voice made Celestine's chest ache. Without thinking, she reached across the space between them and placed her hand over his. "I'm sorry," she said simply. Marcus stared down at their joined hands, his expression unreadable. "You should rest. Tomorrow we start weapons training." But he didn't pull away from her touch, and Celestine felt something warm and hopeful bloom in her chest. This hard, damaged man was beginning to let her see beneath his armor. As she lay in her narrow cot that night, Celestine reflected on the changes already taking place within her. The soft princess who had arrived yesterday was giving way to someone stronger, more capable. But more than that, she was discovering parts of herself that had been dormant: courage, resilience, and a growing attraction to the man who was teaching her to survive. The cabin's walls seemed less confining now, the rough blanket more comfortable. Outside, the forest's night sounds had become a lullaby instead of a threat. And somewhere in the room beyond, Marcus kept his own vigil, protecting her even in sleep. For the first time since the assassination attempt, Celestine felt truly safe. More than that, she felt alive in ways she'd never experienced in the palace's gilded halls. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new lessons, new opportunities to prove herself. But tonight, she allowed herself to imagine what it might be like to choose this life, not as a hiding place, but as a home. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it filled her with a sense of possibility she'd never dared to dream. The emergency beacon's shrill alarm cut through the peaceful afternoon like a blade. Marcus was instantly alert, his body moving with practiced efficiency as he checked the perimeter sensors. Celestine looked up from where she'd been practicing knife work, her violet eyes questioning. "Storm coming," Marcus announced, his voice tight with concern. "A big one. The atmospheric readings are off the charts. This isn't just weather, it's a full electromagnetic tempest." As if summoned by his words, the first rumble of thunder rolled across the forest. The sky, which had been a brilliant azure moments before, now churned with dark clouds that seemed to swirl with their own inner light. "What does that mean?" Celestine asked, setting down her practice blade. "It means we need to get to the observation shelter. Now." Marcus was already moving, grabbing emergency supplies from various caches around the cabin. "These storms can last for days, and they'll fry every electronic system for kilometers. We'll be blind and deaf until it passes." The observation shelter was built high in the canopy of Verdania's massive trees, a small but secure pod that Marcus had constructed as both a lookout post and emergency refuge. Reaching it required climbing a series of rope ladders and narrow walkways that swayed alarmingly in the rising wind. "I can't do this," Celestine said, looking up at the dizzying height. 3 weeks of training had made her stronger, but she'd never been good with heights. "You can," Marcus said firmly, positioning himself behind her on the ladder. "Trust your training. Trust yourself. And if you fall, I'll catch you." The simple promise, spoken with such quiet conviction, gave Celestine the courage she needed. Step by step, rung by rung, she climbed toward the canopy as the storm gathered strength around them. Marcus's presence behind her was a constant reassurance, his voice guiding her through moments of panic. They reached the shelter just as the first drops of rain began to fall. The structure was small, perhaps 3 meters square, but solidly built and equipped with everything needed for extended isolation. Marcus activated the protective shields just as the sky opened up in earnest. The storm that engulfed them was unlike anything in Celestine's experience. Lightning split the sky in brilliant forks of purple and gold, while thunder crashed with such force that it seemed to shake the very foundations of the tree. Rain lashed against the shelter's transparent walls in sheets so thick they could barely see beyond arm's length. "It's beautiful," Celestine breathed, watching the display with wonder rather than fear. Marcus looked at her in surprise. Most people find these storms terrifying. Most people haven't spent their lives in climate-controlled palaces. She pressed her hand against the wall, feeling the vibration of thunder through the structure. This is raw, honest. There's no pretense in a storm, it simply is what it is. Like you, Marcus said quietly. The words hung between them, and Celestine turned to find him watching her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. In the strange, shifting light of the storm, his face seemed carved from shadow and flame. Marcus. She began, but whatever she'd meant to say was lost as he stepped closer. You're not the same person who arrived here 3 weeks ago, he continued, his voice rough with emotion. That princess was beautiful but brittle, like something that might shatter at the first real touch. But you. His hand came up to cup her cheek. You're steel wrapped in silk. Fire contained in crystal. You're magnificent. Celestine felt her breath catch. You see me, she whispered, the words carrying the weight of years of being looked at but never truly seen. I see you, he confirmed, his thumb tracing the line of her cheekbone. I see your strength, your courage, your incredible capacity for growth. I see the woman you've become, and I. Thunder crashed overhead, so close it seemed to split the world in two. In the brilliant flash of lightning that followed, they were frozen in tableau, two people balanced on the edge of something that would change everything. I've been fighting this, Marcus admitted, his forehead coming to rest against hers. Telling myself it was wrong, that I was taking advantage, that we're too different. We are different, Celestine agreed, her hands finding the solid warmth of his chest. You're a man who's learned to trust no one, and I'm a woman who's never been allowed to choose anything for herself. You've been hurt by the world, and I've been sheltered from it. But Marcus. She looked up into his eyes, seeing past the walls he'd built to the wounded soul beneath. Maybe our differences are exactly what we need. The storm raged around their shelter, but inside, time seemed suspended. Marcus's hands framed her face as if she were something precious and fragile, his blue eyes searching hers for any sign of uncertainty. If we do this, he said, his voice barely audible above the thunder, there's no going back. I can't be casual about you, Celestine. I don't know how. Then don't be, she replied, rising on her toes to close the distance between them. I don't want casual. I want real. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, as if they were both afraid the other might disappear. But as Celestine's lips parted beneath his, as her hands fisted in his shirt to pull him closer, gentleness gave way to hunger. Marcus kissed her like a man starving, his control finally cracking after weeks of careful restraint. His hands tangled in her silver hair, angling her head to deepen the kiss, and Celestine responded with equal fervor. Years of rigid protocol and careful composure melted away, leaving only the essential truth of what she felt for this complicated, damaged, beautiful man. Celestine, he groaned against her lips, her name a prayer and a plea. I know, she whispered back, understanding the question he couldn't ask. I know what this means. I know what I'm choosing. The storm outside seemed to echo the tempest building between them. With shaking hands, they helped each other out of their clothes, each revelation of skin a new wonder to explore. Marcus worshipped her body with reverent touches, mapping every curve and hollow as if committing them to memory. Celestine marveled at the play of muscle beneath scarred skin, her fingers tracing old wounds with infinite tenderness. You're perfect, Marcus breathed, pressing kisses along the elegant line of her throat. I'm not, Celestine replied, arching beneath his touch. I'm selfish and spoiled and completely out of my depth. But with you, I want to be better. You make me want to be worthy of this. You already are, he assured her, his lips finding the sensitive spot where her neck met her shoulder. You're brave and strong and so beautiful it stops my heart. They came together as the storm reached its peak, their bodies moving in perfect synchronization despite the newness of their intimacy. Marcus was gentle but passionate, bringing Celestine to heights of pleasure she'd never imagined possible. She gave herself to him completely, holding nothing back, and felt him do the same in return. Afterward, they lay entwined beneath the thermal blankets, watching the storm's spectacular light show through the shelter's transparent roof. Celestine traced lazy patterns on Marcus's chest, marveling at how right this felt, how perfectly she fit against his side. "I never understood before," she murmured, her voice drowsy with satisfaction. "Understood what? Why people write poetry about love. Why they start wars over it, give up kingdoms for it." She propped herself up on an elbow to look at him. "I thought it was just pleasant companionship, political alliance, maybe some nice physical sensations. But this." She gestured vaguely at the space between them, encompassing everything they'd just shared. "This is something else entirely." Marcus's arm tightened around her. "It scares me," he admitted. "How much I need you already. How much I want to protect you, to keep you safe and happy. I've never felt anything like this." "Good," Celestine said firmly. "Because neither have I, and I'd hate to think I was the only one whose world just got turned completely upside down." They made love again as the storm began to subside, slower this time, savoring each touch and whispered endearment. The urgent desperation of their first coupling gave way to something deeper, a connection that transcended the physical and touched something fundamental in both their souls. As dawn broke over the forest, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, they sat wrapped together in comfortable silence. The storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean and new. "What happens now?" Celestine asked, the question that had been hovering unspoken between them. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his fingers combing through her hair. "I don't know," he said finally. "You're a princess of the Valerian Empire. I'm a hermit with more baggage than a cargo transport. By any logical measure, this is impossible." "Logic is overrated," Celestine replied, surprising herself with her vehemence. "I've spent my entire life making logical choices, doing what was expected, following the path laid out for me. And where did it get me? Someone tried to kill me in my own home, Marcus. The life I thought was so secure, so perfectly ordered, it was all an illusion." She turned in his arms to face him fully. "This is the first real thing I've ever had. You are the first person who's ever seen me for who I truly am, not just what I represent. I'm not giving that up for logic or duty or anything else." Marcus cupped her face in his hands, his expression serious. "You say that now, but when this is over, when you're safe and can return to your real life." "This is my real life," Celestine interrupted, covering his hands with hers. "Whatever else happens, whatever we have to face, I choose this. I choose you." The conviction in her voice seemed to ease something in Marcus's expression. He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. "I love you," he whispered, the words muffled against her neck. "I didn't want to, tried not to, but I love you so much it terrifies me." "I love you too," Celestine replied, the admission feeling like the most natural thing in the world. "And I'm not going anywhere." Outside their shelter, Verdania's forest sparkled with raindrops like scattered diamonds. The storm had passed, but its effects would linger, in the charged air, in the way the light seemed different, in the fundamental change it had wrought in two hearts that had found their home in each other. As they made their way back down to the cabin, hand in hand, both Marcus and Celestine knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The hermit's sanctuary had become something more, a place where two wounded souls had found healing in love, where a princess had discovered her true strength, and where a man afraid to trust had learned to hope again. The storm had passed, but the love it had revealed would weather any tempest yet to come.